Time. So yeah, thank you so much, Leon. And as I started doing research into the different speakers that we were having this year, it really felt like a kind of a back to basics in a way. And it was just perfect that we have you to really take us. It feels like the ground floor, the most important part when we start talking about African spirituality, and who we are as a people and who we are as a bunch of humans as well, because we all contain certain levels of melanin. So I just want to say thank you again, and please tell us, what do you do? And then we can start moving into why you do what you do.
Okay, so I teach sport and exercise science at London South Bank University, and I've done that since 2007, 2008, something like that. And throughout the years of just teaching science, I felt like there was a lot of stuff missing, especially with regards to how our bodies work from a Black perspective. So I'd be teaching science and I'd be looking in anatomy and physiology books, and they'd just be missing out things like my anatomy and physiology book when I was at university, it showed a picture of the brain and it showed like all the glands in the brain. So you could see the brain, but it didn't mention the pineal gland. And for some strange reason, I just found that interesting. So after I left university, certain things like that kept on popping up where I'd be studying science and then I felt like something was missing. So it wasn't until after I left university that I started to do research, and I stumbled across, two books. Dr. Layla Africa's book, Nutricide, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's book, the ISIS Papers.
Yes.
Yeah. So those two books kind of changed everything for me. Made me question pretty much everything. And then from there, I started to do a lot more research, got introduced to Dr. Richard King, read his books. And then, that just took me down a rabbit hole with regards to how the body works and how, we're not all the same. So our bodies do work a little bit different. And then it culminated in me putting together a course called The Hidden Science of Black Holistic Health. That was in 2017. And since I've done that, everything's just kind of grown organically from that.
That's fantastic. And so for you, as someone who's dealing in sports science, so you're seeing how the body moves and the body works, are you saying that you can see that there are fundamental differences between highly melanated people and people who are melanin recessive or not as melanin full as others?
Yeah, I think everyone can see it. Everyone sees the difference. It's just that we're taught to not see color and not see differences. So when children who are just very logical, they just see a difference, they're told not to see it, and then they kind of suppress it and then don't say anything as they get older. When I was at school, one of my friends, again, when children are at school and they're just being logical, they just say obvious things. So one of my white friends, he was like, why is it always the Black kids are the fastest? That's what he said at school. It's like, why are you guys always the fastest? Why are you guys can always jump the highest? And back at school, it was obvious, but no one knew the science behind it. So everyone would be like, oh, you can't say that, man. But he's like, no, any school you go to, It's like the black kids are the fastest. They can run the fastest and jump the highest. Why is that? When we're children, we want to know why. When we get older, we're told not to ask why. We're told not to use logic. And that's why I love teaching children science, because children find it very easy to understand. Because all you're doing, my definition of science is logic backed up by evidence. All you're doing is using logic and then backing up your logic, your common sense, with proof.
And so really, before we even get into what are those differences, what is melanin?
I think Dr. Laila Africa said it best. He said that melanin is the chemical key to life. Now, in science, there's a lot of confusing jargon. I mentioned that in my book, like the way most people don't like science because of the confusing jargon around it. They like to use big words. They like to use confusing words. Instead of using a word that everyone would understand, they'll just make up some scientific term, probably in Latin, because Latin tends to be the language of science. So no one can understand it. And that is by design. It keeps the lay people out of the know and that sort of stuff. So if you type in what is melanin into your search engine, you're going to come up with various definitions. They're going to tell you that it's a biopolymer. Some are going to tell you it's a biochrome, it's a polypigment, it's a poly this, it's a bio that. No one understands any of those words. But if I was to say to you, melanin is the chemical key to life, everyone, including your children, understand that. That means no melanin, no life.
Right.
Simple as that.
Wow. So that's pretty profound. No melanin, no life. Okay. So then why is it the key to life? What is it that melanin actually does? Because I listened to one of your presentations in preparation for this, and I thought it was really interesting when you talk about how scientists up until today, they either dance around or they fudge around the subject. And it made me think of when I went to school. When I went to school, we learned that melanin makes your skin go darker when the sun comes out, and that was it. So how is it that it is the key to life?
Well, that's a good question. And the answer lies in what it does with water. And I don't really want to reveal that. That's going a bit deep with the science, but I do reveal that in my debut book, plug, The Hidden Science of Melanin. So I do reveal what melanin does with water. So that will blow people's minds away. But just to give you a little insight into it, I always say that melanin is like similar to chlorophyll. Now, this will show you how important melanin is. Every child in every school, literally every school, they teach you about photosynthesis.
Yes.
And what is photosynthesis? That's when the green plants, the leaves, they absorb sunlight. How do they do that? Because of a green pigment called chlorophyll. It absorbs the sunlight, and then in the presence of, sunlight, carbon dioxide and water, it produces a chemical reaction inside of the plant that results in the plant having food, which is glucose, and then the plant releasing oxygen. The oxygen is the byproduct, and it releases it into the air. And then what do we as humans do? We breathe in that oxygen.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is we breathe out carbon dioxide. So what they breathe out, we breathe in, and what we breathe out, they breathe in. So there's kind of like a symbiotic relationship between us and plants. But that shows you how important chlorophyll is to life, literally to every plant. Chlorophyll, photosynthesis. Without photosynthesis, there would be no plant life.
Yeah.
Now, use that analogy and apply it to melanin. Without melanin, there'd be no human life. It's literally, there's a similar process. Now, there is a scientist that says that he calls melanin the human photosynthesis. He says that melanin can do photosynthesis. That's untrue. Melanin cannot do photosynthesis. Melanin doesn't do exactly the same as plants. Melanin is photovoltaic. And what that means is it takes light from the sun and then convert it into voltage. Photo means light, voltaic means voltage. So melanin is photovoltaic. It takes light and converts it into voltage. What's voltage? Electricity, energy. So without that electricity, without that energy, there is no life.
So is it the amount of melanin also has something to do with the amount of electricity energy that we have?
Well, there's different types.
No, okay, right.
Yeah.
And what are the different types?
So there's different types of skin melanin, and then there's a brain type of melanin as well. And there's melanin in plants as well. There's all different types. But if we're talking about human beings, we're talking about two main types, pheomelanin and eumelanin, and then one brain type, which is called neuromelanin. Everyone has neuromelanin. It's the black substance in your brain. What they don't tell you is that melanated human beings have 12 melanin centers in their brain. Now, I've been to university, I've studied science. I know a lot of my students who have studied neurology, they studied neuroscience, they've never heard of these 12 melanin centers. Yeah.
Never heard.
But
never.
Dr. Leila Africa talks about them, Dr. Richard King talks about them, Dr. T. Owens Moore talks about them, 12 melanin centers. And I break them down in my book. I've actually got illustrations of where they are in the brain. One of them is called substantia nigra. And just the sound of that, you should be able to understand what it means. Substantia nigra. Yeah.
Substantial black.
Yeah, substantial amount of blackness. There's a substantial amount of blackness in your brain, and they call it substantia nigra. And when that literally controls our motor function, how we move. So if that starts to degrade or fade, or something happens to your substantia nigra, you'll start to suffer from neurological diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And this is very well researched and published. Like everything in my book, I've referenced from published papers, scientific papers, and that sort of stuff. They understand this substantia nigra thing because of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all of these neurological diseases. They found that the people that suffer from these things, they're lacking in substantia nigra in the brain. Yeah, but that's everyone. Everyone's got the substantia nigra. Everyone's got neuromelanin. Where we differ is the skin type of melanin, which is eumelanin, which comes in black and brown, and pheomelanin, which comes in red and yellow. And through my research, what I found is the black and brown type, it's a better absorber of light. And remember, melanin is photovoltaic. So the more light that melanin can absorb, the more voltage, the more voltaic, the more energy. And then the pheomelanin comes in red and yellow. So red hair, blonde hair, paler skin, that's not a great absorber of light. This is not my opinion. This is just science.
Yes.
Hence, these are my people who have high amounts of pheomelanin. When they go out in the sun, they're more susceptible to skin cancer and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Because their melanin doesn't absorb ultraviolet light like ours does.
Right.
So that's the biggest main difference.
Right. And so this absorption of light, because we've been hearing on the kind of like esoteric circles, a lot of people are talking about light codes, and they're talking a lot more about light esoterically and not just kind of like physically. So if melanin is allowing you to absorb more light, which means then your body can create more electricity, more energy, then what does this allow us to do as melanated human beings?
Well, like they say, the sky's the limit, but there's no limit. There's no limit. Like you say, people associate light esoterically. So people associate light with knowledge. So if you're a human being who can absorb more knowledge, then what are you really capable of? If you can absorb more knowledge than me, that means you're more knowledgeable, or you're more enlightened, because you're absorbing more light. So you're more enlightened. So what can you do with that power? It's literally anything. Like anything that has power has more or lots and lots of power has great potential. So if you have the power to absorb more knowledge, more light, more energy, you have greater potential. And it's what you do with that potential that is important, because a lot of us have potential and we don't realize it, we waste it, or we just don't realize that we have the potential. We don't realize we have this power. And some could argue that that's the reason why a lot of stuff is hidden from us, because if we was to realize our true potential, our true power, and really wake up, then game over.
Yes. Well, I think, you know, when I listen to you talking about that, then definitely lots of things that we see all around us make sense. I mean, one of the things that you talk about is the way in which, especially medical institutions and institutions of the law, love to attach certain things like more likely to against us. And it's definitely something that really breaks my heart when I hear other people repeating them, because I've noticed that there's a definite trend where when you go to, and because things are really hidden in plain sight, if you go to the National Office of Statistics, their website, you can actually get really, really good data that does not agree with a lot of the stuff that we get told of more likely to. And so I'd really like you to talk some more about some of the ways in which, you know, the medicalization almost of melanin can, if you're not clever, you'll go around thinking actually melanin makes you weak and you're about to drop off of the planet any moment now. So yeah, I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about how that little bit of magic has worked.
Well, yeah, I do talk a lot about how the medical industry, they tap dance around melanin. So doctors, professionals, quote unquote experts, they'll always tap dance around melanin, yeah? Or they tiptoe, they don't mention it at all. But what I mean when I say they tap dance is they'll mention it, but they'll always mention it in a negative light. So they'll say, the reason why you got low vitamin D is because your melanin blocks sunlight. In other words, it's your fault you got low vitamin D, it's your melanin, yeah? And then if you don't understand the truth about melanin, you'll be like, right, this melanin thing ain't that great. I mean, it's blocking my vitamin D, for crying out loud. That's not a good thing. And then you just go along with their narratives. And then they tell Black people, you're more likely to suffer from type 2 diabetes. You're more likely to suffer from prostate cancer. You're more likely to get fibroids. You're more likely to die from COVID. You're more likely to do this, more likely to do that. That's great. Then you ask the obvious question again. Do this with children, they'll ask the obvious question. Why? Why are we more likely? And then that's where the tap dancing happens. Oh, we're not sure. Could be something to do with your diet or your ethnicity. What? What do you mean our ethnicity? Because if it's something to do with our ethnicity, if you're saying it's Black people in general, then we should see that same disease everywhere there's Black people.
Yeah.
Or if you're saying it's Africans, then we should see that disease everywhere there's Africans. If you're saying it's Caribbeans, then we should see that disease everywhere there's Caribbeans. But we're seeing it in certain places. We're seeing it a lot in America. We're seeing it a lot over here. And then we're starting to see it in some other hot countries. So what's the issue then? It can't be our ethnicity, because we just do a little bit of logic and go back 100 years. If it was our ethnicity, we should always have been suffering from this. Go back 50 years where we suffering from these diseases. No, then what has changed? And then that's where the tap dancing happens. You'll never get a straight answer from experts. And one, because they either don't know about melanin, so they don't know the truth about melanin, or they do. And again, that's the reason why I love doing this with children, because children are so logical. They get it. If I tell them the reason why these experts tap dance around melanin is because they don't know the truth, or they do know the truth. It's one of the two. If you don't know the truth, it makes sense. You tap dancing around a subject that you don't understand. You're talking about a subject you have no clue about.
Yeah.
But if you do know the truth and you're tap dancing, then that's quite dangerous.
Yes. And so why are they tap dancing? What's going on there?
Well, again, we'd have to
let's
put two and two
ignore
together,
them.
because
I was even say, let's ignore them. What's going on then? So let's say type 2 diabetes. What's going on there?
Well, type 2 diabetes is, again, to do with melanin. So in my book, I break down how it's associated with our liver and kidneys. Our liver and kidneys produce vitamin D. So it all goes back to melanin. Like, melanin is the elephant in the room, yeah? Right. Once you read the book and you understand how it relates to melanin, it kind of makes sense that we suffer from certain things, yeah? And it's our lack of knowledge around this thing, which is making it easier for them to just, you know, follow or give us these narratives that we run with. We follow these narratives. We run with the Black people are more likely to narrative because we believe what they say. Yeah. And plus, we're looking around and we're seeing Black people who are got type 2 diabetes and this, that, and the other. So we're like, oh, we must be more likely to. Yeah. And the other narrative that they love to run with is that the sun is harmful. And that's another one that Black people are starting to believe now, that the sun is this extremely harmful thing. And Black people, you need to stay away from it. You need to stay away from this extremely harmful thing. Again, when I do this with children or anyone who uses logic, they'll be like, but we've been exposed to this extremely harmful thing for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yes. Yeah.
So how come now, when we're not even out in the sun as much as we were before, how come now we have to stay away from it? And it's this extremely, extremely, extremely harmful thing. Just using logic, it doesn't make sense.
Yes. And I've seen now it's become normal to hear Black people talk about using sunscreen, which is something that I find incredibly worrying. And I mean, I don't know if have you heard of Dr. Jack Cruz?
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah, and he white American neurologist who actually moved from, I think it was Washington, to be on the line of equator where it goes for America, even though he's the ginger-haired, pale-skinned white man, because what he worked out was actually the sun is not dangerous even for pale white people. There's a way in which they can manage how they interact with the sun, because actually they are falling very, very sick because of lack of vitamin D as well. And I find this a lot with a lot of so-called kind of illnesses that are pushed somehow like we get them more than other people, because when you actually start looking at the figures and socioeconomic kind of like indicators, you start finding bands of people are more likely to suffer from a thing. But in that band, if you want to, you can take women. If you want to, you can take, you know, Black people. If you want to, you can take Asian people. If you want to, some of those bands, you can take Polish people out and stick them. So it's quite, there's been quite a dangerous trend for a long time, I feel, to really almost like a magician's spell to get us to believe that we're more likely to suffer from things, because we know as human beings, if we believe it, we make it so, don't we?
Yeah. What you believe to be true, you might as well say that's the truth. Whatever you believe to be true is true. Exactly. So with regards to the sunscreen, because our melanin is weak because of a lot of the foods that we're eating, the environment, pollution, and the fact that we just don't understand what melanin is supposed to be doing. So we're doing things that are counterintuitive to increasing our melanin. So everyone's, especially if you live in the UK, everyone's melanin is weak. So when they go out in the sun, they're getting burnt. And then they're hearing the experts say, well, that means you need sunscreen. They're using their logic thinking, well, I must need sunscreen then. I must need protection from the sun because I'm getting burnt. But I always give people the analogy of wearing a knee brace. When I was younger, I used to play basketball and I injured my knee and I went to the doctors. And the doctors gave me a knee brace and said, you can play on this. Put this knee brace on and you can play on it. So when I put the knee brace on, my knee felt strong and I could play on it. I can jump up and down. I could run with my knee brace on. But guess what actually happened to my knee wearing the knee brace? It made my knee weaker because now the knee brace is doing what my knee is supposed to be doing, all the muscles around my knee. So when I took off the knee brace now, it kind of made the problem worse. Now my knee's even weaker than it ever was. It's the same with sunscreen. You're putting on sunscreen to protect you from the sun. That's what your melanin does. So when you put it on now, your melanin is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. Because what you're saying to yourself is, I don't have what it takes to protect me from the sun. This melanin thing is not good enough. So let me put on this white chemical cream and see if that helps. And then we start to rely on the white chemical cream. as opposed to increasing our weak melanin.
And so how can we do that? How can we try and improve the quality of our melanin so that we can get more than skin protection, so that we can actually really get to see what it's like to be working at optimum level, where we're able to take in a lot more light, which means it's able to convert to a lot more electricity. We all know our brain synapses are working on electricity, you know, electrical signals going all around the place. So what are some of the simple things that, or maybe even complicated things that we can do?
I've actually got an image in my book where I break it down. Like, I break it down using science, but I know that people love imageries as well. So in my book, I've got an image where I break down how to increase your melanin, like step by step. Yeah.
Fantastic.
The color image, children can look at it. So you don't even, if the science is too much for you to read it, you could literally look at this image and it will break down how to increase your melanin step by step. And you increase it in all the different ways. So there's a chapter called Foods for Melanin. That's going to help with what foods we need to eat for our melanin. There's a chapter called Water for Melanin. Very important, because we need to understand what melanin does with water. That one is very important. And then how to interact with sunlight and that sort of stuff. So the stronger your melanin, the more you are just naturally protected from the harmful UV rays. So you won't need it. But if you, because our melanin is weak, if you do start using sunscreen, then your body starts to rely on the sunscreen and your melanin gets weaker. The same way, if I continue to use my knee brace, my body's going to rely on the knee brace, and then my knee gets weaker and weaker and weaker. So it makes more sense for me to take off the knee brace and go to the gym and strengthen my knee. That way I don't have to use the knee brace, because if I use the knee brace and I rely on it, then I'm going to have to use the knee brace all the way up into my 70s, 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, completely. And I've got to say to everyone that if you purchase tickets and come down to African Spiritual Practices, then you will be able to hear Leon speak live with a full presentation about the science of melanin, but he'll also be around to sign copies of his book. So his book will be there for sale, and he'll also be around to get signed copies. And I'm thinking for people who are buying online tickets, I'll talk to Leon, and I think we can put a link in so that you can purchase his book online, and we'll get it signed and sent out to you as well. So we have technology, we can make all of that happen. And details of how to get tickets for African Spiritual Practices are actually in this chat, and I'll also put it on the YouTube part as well. But I want to ask you about, so neuromelanin, that's the melanin that's in the brain. And I've heard that alongside when people have talked about Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and all of this stuff. But what, you know, that's relation to when it's not working properly. But when it is working properly, what is neuromelanin doing? What's the function of it?
Yeah, so like the name suggests, substantia nigra, substantial amount of blackness or black substance. That black substance literally controls your motor activity. And for those who are not into science, when they say motor, they just mean movement. So it's full of dopamine neurons, yeah? And it controls the way we move. Not only that, it controls our memory, it controls how we think. So it's a very powerful substance that's in the middle of our brain that no one tends to talk about, substantia nigra. But the fact that it controls movement kind of makes everything they tap dance around make sense. So when every year where there's a sporting event, a huge sporting event like the Olympics or World Cup, I think World Cup's this year, or the Euros or something like that, and highly melanated human beings thrive and win gold medals and do all these amazing things, people, especially young people, ask the obvious question: why is it that these melanated folks are the best at all of these sports? And that's where the tap dancing happens. They'll mention everything but melanin. Take Usain Bolt. When Usain Bolt was tearing down the track and winning all these records and breaking all of these records, nearly every show was, what makes Usain Bolt so fast? What makes Jamaicans so fast? Everyone wanted to know what makes them so fast. And even if you don't believe that this has anything to do with it, the fact that no one mentioned it means that this is the elephant in the room. What makes him so fast? No one's going to mention melanin. No one, not one person. Yeah. And again, not even just skin melanin, the brain melanin, neural melanin controls movement. So if he's moving faster than everyone else, it must have something to do with his substantia nigra, because that's what controls movement. It's just simple logic.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's that thing of, you know, I would say when I was younger, because now it's the stereotype of, you know, it's only black people who can dance, white people can't dance. But I would say there was a time when I was younger, that gap was a lot more obvious. And it used to be quite funny, you know, when you're at school, the black kids, we would be together and we would kind of like have a little laugh about the fact that it just seemed like other people in the classrooms, namely the white kids, just couldn't move as quickly to the beat. And then, you know, when music changes and actually, you know, the movement is in the gap between the beat, you know, there's things that somehow some people can do and other people can't do. And I say all of that to just also add in that thing of, you said about sports. When a black person suddenly enters a sport that's been traditionally seen as white, you feel it when you've got friends who are honest enough. They're kind of like, oh my God, it's about to leave us. It's about to go to the next level, be it golf, be it tennis, you know, and now we're starting to see some black folks swimming and, you know, the conversation is starting, shit, it's going to move away from us. It's going to become a black thing. So are you really saying that actually, if you are living in terms of eating and drinking and exercising to the optimum level that your melanin needs, you're really becoming the optimum human being, and that makes you very, very powerful?
Yeah, and that's everyone. Like, once you start to really tap into your true potential, then you're gonna realize things that you never thought were possible. But especially highly melanated human beings, when you start to realize that it's the melanin that interprets the light. So light is like a form of, you know, vibration frequency. It's a form of energy, and your melanin interprets that. It literally translates it for your physiology. It translates it for your internal system. So when the light comes in now, it translates it and then takes it to wherever it needs to go. And it's amazing, because if we understood the power of what our melanin does with regards to vitamin D, i.e. absorbing sunlight and then converting our cholesterol into vitamin D, then we'll start to realize how important the sun is to our health. Because one thing that they are correct on when they say it to black people is, you got high blood pressure and you got high cholesterol. That is correct. Why? Because we're not out in the sun making our melanin convert all of that high cholesterol into vitamin D. If we understood that, just that alone, the internal chemistry, the internal alchemy would be totally different. Totally different if you understood that your melanin needs to be exposed to those harmful UV rays, just so your body can convert that high cholesterol into high vitamin D. As opposed to, you know, take a drug, you know, and that's something they tell us, which, again, this is why, again, I love talking to children about science, because they're very logical and everything makes sense. When you talk to adults, all of a sudden there's contradictions and hypocrisy. When I was younger, they told me, don't take drugs. Drugs are bad. No one should be taking drugs. Stay away from drugs. Now, as we're older, every human being is told, take drugs, take this drug, take this experimental drug that we've only just come out with. Take drugs. Drugs are going to save your life. Take drugs. That is hypocrisy to me. I can't listen to people like that.
Yeah. No, that so makes a good point. I listened to a doctor called Dr. Bergman, and if anybody has any kind of spinal problems, any body problem, actually find him, Dr. Bergman, chiropractor, because he talks a lot about how people should look at high blood pressure. He's always saying high blood pressure is not an illness. It's an indicator of something may be going on, but it doesn't, one person's high blood pressure does not mean the same thing as person B high blood pressure, or person C's high blood pressure. And he says the same thing about cholesterol. He's like, people shouldn't just, because you've been told high cholesterol, start doing everything to bring that down. It's not an indication of sickness. You need to look at everything else that's going on. So I'm really pleased. You're the first person I've heard mention about actually the body uses cholesterol with the sun to turn into really high grade vitamin D.
Yeah, so cholesterol is used for various things in the body. Cholesterol is used for patching up. So anything that's damaged in the body will use cholesterol. So that's the reason why people who suffer from heart disease, when they open up the arteries, they'll see a lot of cholesterol. It's because their arteries were damaged and the body was putting cholesterol plaque, like putting it in there. Yeah. So the body uses cholesterol for patching things up. The body uses cholesterol to heal things. The body uses cholesterol for hormone production. So if you have an issue with cholesterol, you're going to have an issue with your hormones. And that is going to be especially important if you're a Black woman, because if I'm someone who wants to mess up your health, all I need to do is mess up your hormones. That's all I need to do. And I've got you for life. I've got you as a customer in my hospital for the rest of your life, because your hormones give your cells instructions. That's literally what they do. When they get released from glands, they go around to cells and give those cells instructions. So your estrogen, that's going to give your cells instructions. Testosterone is going to give your cells instructions. Cortisol is going to give your cells instructions. Now, if I can mess up those instructions, I can literally mess up your whole body.
Right. That completely and utterly makes sense. I know, just, anecdotally looking at friends and family over, the last 50 odd years, one thing I always say to everybody is, I just see it as soon as people start taking, especially I found, high blood pressure meds, very soon I find they start having kidney problems. They start having back problems. They never come off, and they all end up in this kind of worsening state of back and kidney problems, spinal problems, especially lower spinal problems. And it's just so interesting that that's the way it goes. And I know people now who are like second generation. They literally saw their parents go from one day a doctor says blood pressure's too high, next minute they're taking all this medication, next minute their spine, next minute their kidneys, and their children are now in their 50s and they started on the ladder. And it's so frustrating. I'm always sending out Dr. Bergman stuff to everybody because of how he lays it all out, but people are so frightened to come away from their medication. It's really, really, really difficult. I mean, with your knowledge of food and health in general, and understanding how melanin works, do you have any ideas as to how we can really, really better take care of ourselves without having to go to allopathic medicines that really just make us worse?
Well, when it comes on to improving one's health, I'm not one to preach, because I feel like the environment that we live in right now is very hard for any of us to say that we're 100% healthy. Like, a lot of people talk about Dr. Sebi, and Dr. Sebi was arguably one of the greatest alongside Dr. Lael Africa when it comes to Black holistic health. But Dr. Sebi, he lived during a different time, like with regards to the environment. The food wasn't as crazy as it is now when Dr. Sebi was alive. The water wasn't as crazy as it is now when Dr. Sebi was alive. The environment, the pollution. So things have changed. So being as strict as Dr. Sebi in this environment, you're going to struggle. you're going to struggle to eat the foods that he says to eat, because they've probably been, the seeds have probably been, tampered with and that sort of stuff. So we're not eating quote unquote real foods anymore. So I say that to say that we have to just try and do our best in the environment that we're in, but be aware of what could be adversely affecting our health and adversely affecting our melanin. What I've found though is that most people, they don't really want to improve their health. They just want whatever symptoms they've got to stop. So if someone's got, I don't know, arthritis, their aim, and this is just through my research, I could be wrong, but through my observation, I found that a lot of people who have health issues, they just want to get rid of their health issue. Like if they got high blood pressure, they just want normal blood pressure. If they've got arthritis, they just want the pain to stop. They just want to get away from pain. They don't want to be, charged up and super energized and, this super enlightened being. They don't want that. They just want the pain to stop. That's the reason why medication is so effective at convincing people to take it. Because if you suffer from, I don't know, back pain, and then I say, take this pill, it's going to get rid of your back pain, people are going to take it.
Yeah.
Now, if you use logic, you might ask questions. How does it get rid of my back pain? My back pain is due to nerve damage. Does it heal my nerves? No, it just hides the pain. Just hides the pain. So the pain is still there. It's just that you can't feel it. And then children will ask logical questions like, ain't that going to make it worse over time if it's hiding the pain? Because that means I'm going to be moving and doing things that are causing me pain, but I can't feel it. But when you're in pain, again, through my own observation, these people just want to get rid of their pain. So here's your answer. Take this pill. It's going to get rid of your pain. And that's the reason why medication is so effective at changing people's minds and making them go down that road.
I love that. We're in our last 17 minutes. So I'm just going to read out some comments and questions and get you to answer some of the questions. Some of them I can see you've already answered. So Chuck says, I was diagnosed with diabetes. Sorry, guys, I'm at that age now. Got to move in and take off the glasses. I was diagnosed with diabetes type 2. I got the diagnosis after I received an psychotic, I think, injection for a period of time. I used logic and I said I got this injection and now I've got this condition. When I stopped the depot and then started recovering and changing my diet and exercising, there's been physical changes. I don't even acknowledge the diagnosis now. That makes sense, especially with diabetes. And then somebody said, I've been told by my GP that I have, she didn't finish that. So Sonia finished that. Oh, right, Sonia has later. And then Patricia said, I heard that vitamin D is a hormone. Is that true? I think you answered that, didn't you?
Well, yeah, it is. They call it vitamin, but it's actually a hormone. So vitamin D gives your cells instructions. Yeah.
All right, so yeah, Sonia's written properly what she meant. Okay, my GP told me that I have too much good cholesterol. What does this mean? She told me to stop eating nuts as I eat a lot of this. Good cholesterol?
Yeah, in science, they say that there's two types. Well, you can have good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. So they call two different types, like low density lipoproteins. If you've ever had your cholesterol levels taken, they'll tell you about HDLs and LDLs. The HDLs are called high density lipoproteins and the LDLs are called low density lipoproteins. Now the LDLs are the quote unquote bad type, but the LDLs are the type that patch up damage. They're the ones that, at night they go into your arteries or wherever there's damage and try to patch up the damage. But because if someone suffers from a heart attack, when they go into the arteries, they see the LDLs, patching up stuff, but clogging up stuff at the same time, they'll be like, oh, you bad LDLs. So they call the LDLs bad cholesterol. And they call the HDLs good cholesterol. The HDLs are supposed to take, once that damage has been healed, the HDLs are supposed to take that LDL, which now forms a scab or whatever, and take it back to the liver to get resynthesized. So if the doctor's telling her that she's got too much good cholesterol, it just means that the doctor has told her that she's got too much of the HDLs.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Vanillin asked, and what's the name of the doctor you mentioned, sister? Dr. Bergman, Bergman, chiropractor. He's a biggish guy, longish hair. I think he's got some facial hair at the moment. He laughs a lot, is the best I can say, and he's very, very passionate about the spine and understanding how the body all fits together. And Dr. Cruz, Jack Cruz, who talks a lot about vitamin D, sunlight and water, and why these things are really important, and why we must be in the sun, even pale people, why everybody really needs to get a lot more sunshine, so that we can make more vitamin D. So if you've got any more questions, please add them to the chat. And I wanted to ask you, Leon, what pushed you to write the book? Because, you know, you mentioned some key people, and it's only when you mentioned them that I realized, yeah, they wrote about melanin a long time ago, actually, and they're still the main reference points. So what did you learn that led you to write the book to add to the pantheon of knowledge on melanin?
Well, I've been making notes about melanin ever since I found out about it. So over 10 years ago, when I read Nutricide and Dr. Leila Africa was talking about it, when I read the ISIS papers and Dr. Francis Chris Wilson was talking about it, I was like, I need to research this thing. So since then, I've been making notes. But I was thinking about writing a book, but I weren't thinking about writing a book specifically on melanin. And but I had loads and loads of notes, over a decade's worth of notes. So I'm like, wow, that's a lot of information. And what's crazy is it was last year. Was it last year? Last year, my brother in science, Joe Dash, he came out with a melanin book called The Melanin Effect. And I was like, wow, you came out with your own book, man. That's amazing, man. I was bigging him up and I was like, wow, you're the only one from the UK that has a book on melanin, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, bro, you need a book on melanin. Are you crazy? You need to bring out your own book. And I'm thinking to myself, nah, man. And he's like, are you crazy? You need to put out a book on melanin. And then when I thought about all the notes that I've made, I was like, bro, I've got a book on melanin. I've literally got a book already. It's not, I don't even need to write it. I've already got it. So when he planted that seed in my head, I was like, I might as well just, you know, put it together. So it didn't take me long to put it together because I had literally researched this thing for over a decade already. I had so much information on it. But yeah, the people that came before me, like Dr. Richard King, Dr. Leila Africa, there's so many people that have written about melanin. Dr. T. Owens Moore, his book really helped me. His book's called The Science of Melanin. That was one of the first ones where he broke down the science from their perspective, you know, quoting their published papers and that sort of stuff. But I feel like when people write a book, I feel like, especially if it's a subject that's not, or someone else has already been talking about, you should come with something new. And I've read all the books on melanin, and I felt like there were gaps or blind spots in everyone else's melanin book. The same way someone who's going to come after me is going to read my book and be like, yeah, Leon covered this, that, and the other, but Leon missed out this, Leon missed out that. We're all human beings, so we're all going to miss things out. But through reading those other books, I felt like they were missing out things. So the things that are in my book are not in any other book. Like, for example, what melanin does specifically with water. That information is not in any other book. The link between melanin and marijuana. Yes, there's a link between melanin and cannabis. That is not in no other melanin book. The fact that there is actually a link, it actually does something very special to our melanin. And I'll let the people who purchase the book find out about that. Yeah, there's a link between melanin and marijuana. That's not in any other book. And there's various other things that I feel like I've covered that's not been up in another book. Just the language around melanin. I feel like I'm the only one that's really covered it. The fact that the language around melanin is always negative. The language around the sun is always negative. So if you're a Black person, you've got melanin, and your melanin gets charged up by the sun, but you're being taught that this sun is this dangerous thing that you need to stay away from. And you need to put white chemical creams over your black skin to protect you from this harmful thing. Yeah, so we're just being taught all this stuff, and then I break down all of that language. So when people go out there now, they hear the language, like alarm bell should ring, like, oh yeah, the more likely to narrative, now they're running with that, or the harmful UV rays narrative. You hear it straight away because I've kind of pointed it out in the book. This is what they do.
Yes, yeah. I'm so pleased you've done that, because I think sometimes people feel like they're being political and highlighting our plight by repeating this stuff. But I personally, I hear it more as a spell. And when people really keep going on and on and on about things that they haven't actually gone and checked out any figures to actually understand also, what does it mean to say more likely to? I mean, you can say that to anything. You know, I can literally stand there and say women are more likely to fall over. Well, if you've seen some of the high heels people wear, you can believe that. But is it true? And what are we talking about? Are we talking about 11:30 when the pubs close? Or are we talking about 9 o'clock in the morning when people are awake and alert? So I'm really, really pleased that you highlight some of this kind of like almost like double speak that goes on, that people are a bit too quick to jump on when they hear something negative, thinking this is making a political point, but they almost don't realize how they're bringing somebody's wish into reality by deciding this is true, we are more likely to, we get this, I can't stand it when people start with we. Please talk about yourself. Now I'm going to jump off my soapbox on the we, and there's a couple of points and questions down here. So someone was asking if this is a regular event. It is a regular, so Fire from the Sun is a regular-ish show that comes alive more now just before the African Spiritual Practices live event. So all of this week, almost every day, I'll be speaking to another one of the speakers who's going to be talking at the live event on Friday and Saturday, the 26th and 27th of August. And I've put a link in the chat. And Judge says,
Oh,
any
she's there,
more...
sis. I think she wants to go live.
It's me.
Okay.
It's
cool.
Jem.
Oh, hi, Jem. You're
it's just my phone. No. From my
no problem.
Zoom.
No problem.
It's my judgejem@hotmail.com.
Yeah, no problem. We've only got 6 minutes, so come in with your question or point.
It's there. I wrote it down. Basically, it's all to do with the whole thing with Parkinson's and what his thoughts are about vitamin D, exposure to sun. It's all there. Sorry.
So with regards to Parkinson's, this is one of the main reasons they know about substantia nigra. Like a lot of the stuff that we know with melanin, the only reason why we know it is because those white scientists chop us up and look inside of us. Because we as Black people, we've had melanin for a millennia. We've had it the whole time we've been on this planet, but it's not in our makeup to study it by going inside of the brain of another human being. Oh, this person's dead. Let's open up their brain and study what's inside it. We're just not like that. We're not that type of people. But other people are like that. They want to study the insides of the body. They want to study the insides of the brain. So if there's a dead body, don't put it in the ground. Bring it over here. Bring it to this lab. Let's open it up and see what's going on inside the body. So literally everything we know about melanin is because they chop us up and look inside of us. So the reason why they started to realize that this black substance in the brain is so important is because people started to suffer from Parkinson's, and they were like, why did all these people start to suffer from Parkinson's? Realize it's a neurological disease. So they went into the brains of these people and started to realize that the substantia nigra was faded, or it was degraded in some sort of way. So they were like, this black substance is quite important. to the way people move. And that's why they started doing loads of research on it and realized how important that is to Parkinson's and all those types of diseases and that sort of stuff. And then your other question with regards to taking vitamin D supplements, again, you got to understand language. And I break this down in my book. In science, they confuse us with language. Yeah. So when they say a vitamin D supplement, that is a drug. They want you to take drugs. Now, if you want to live your life on drugs, that's cool. So people say, oh, I got low vitamin D, I need to take a vitamin D supplement. Okay, cool, take it. You're taking a drug. If you want to take a drug, that's cool. I think the best thing to do is try and strengthen your melanin so you don't have to take drugs. But hey, we're going into a time where drug taking is the norm. We're literally going into a time where drug taking is the norm. And not only that, they'll force you to take the drug. Take this experimental drug, or you can't go on holiday, can't travel. Yeah. So they're forcing us to take drugs when really all we need is nature. If we just relied on nature, we'd be fine. Rely on the sun, rely on what I call structured water, which I break down what structured water is in the book. Plants, sea, family, love, that's all we need. But we're being taught that we need things that are external to these things. No, don't rely on nature, rely on this thing that we made in a laboratory, rely on this drug, rely on that drug. So vitamin D supplements, some people have to take them because they're low on vitamin D. But again, just like my knee brace, your body's going to start relying on that supplement as opposed to producing it itself.
So basically just get sunshine.
Well, it's not that easy, because if your melanin's weak, if your melanin is weak and then you just go out in the sun,
you're going to be depleted anyway.
You're going to get burned up just like they are, because your melanin's weak. So yeah, we do need the sun, but just like me strengthening my knee, I can't go into the gym with a weak knee and start deadlifting and squatting the heaviest weight. I have to work my way up. Let me start with this lightweight and do a couple reps with this lightweight. Let me get my knee stronger and stronger and stronger. And then tutus, I can do deep squats and that sort of stuff. That's what we need to do with our melanin. There's people that can't look directly at the sun. They can't sun gaze. Our whole culture was based on sun gazing. Like if you go all the way back in time, like ancient Kemet and all that, it was all based on sun gazing. But now we can't even look up at the sun. So again, we have to work our way up. You can't look up at the sun. Look to the side of the sun and do that for 10 seconds. Then close your eyes. Let your eyes absorb all that light. When you're on holiday, try and look up at the sun like first thing in the morning, because it's not as bright. So when the sun's coming up and it's red, it's not as dangerous as when it's white at noon. Yeah. So look in the sun first thing in the morning. So get some of that light. Let the melanin in your eye absorb that light. And then tutus over time, then you can start looking in the sun. I do it every time I'm outside. I look up in the sun, 10 seconds. Oh, okay. I only got 10 seconds this time. And then build my way up to the point where I can look in the sun for like 30 seconds without blinking, just literally look in the sun. But we got to look at it the same way you need to strengthen anything. It takes time and steps.
Okay. So what do you think about the link between dopamine? What they say that. So the the DOSE, all those hormones, supposedly, the brain receptors linked to things like Alzheimer's and all the rest of them, the neurological, they're all linked to the melanin. That's what you're saying?
Well, yeah, the dopamine neurons, they're inside the substantia nigra.
Thank you.
When they talk about
that
dopamine,
makes sense. Yeah, that's what they're talking about.
They're talking about the substantia nigra. They're talking about what the neurons that are actually inside of that black substance.
Yeah. So the receptors, because they always say that the neurotransmitters, blah blah blah. Yeah, got it. Thank you. Yeah. So that's how they count it. Okay, got it.
And with regards to dopamine, because we have more melanin, we have more dopamine. Yeah. And if we need dopamine, dopamine is a good thing. Again, with movement, memory,
it's feel good.
Reward, pleasure, that sort of stuff. But if you've got more dopamine, you're more susceptible to being hooked on something, addicted to something. Yeah. So
and therefore, when you lack it, then you start getting more of these Parkinson's and other things that are going on.
The only thing is, I think we have to be careful, because also things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, a lot of people, well, most of the populations, especially in the West, are now eating so badly, drinking water with fluoride in, that actually all people are getting a lot of mucus and parasites in their brains. And I know, because Jem and I've had this conversation not that long ago, when I saw my mum would be telling a story and she'd get to the end and she'd start it again, and it'd get to the end and she'd start it again. And then a couple of times she thought something had happened, like just before that hadn't happened, because we were all there, and she would get angry, which was very uncharacteristic. But because I've got slightly older friends who've had parents who've had dementia and stuff, I realized that this was one of the signs. And literally she started microdosing magic mushrooms, and it went away, because it was very, very, very early. And I understood that it was inflammation that was, you know, blocking up the receptors or something. So there's lots of other things, but once again, we mustn't think these things are just happening to us because we have more melanin. These are, they're happening. If you go to the old people's homes where my mum used to work, believe me, we are not the majority anywhere, and we're not even 5% of the people who are represented in the wards who are suffering with these degenerative illnesses, but we are getting more. Our numbers are growing because of what we eat and how long we've been here as well, and the
It's
water.
all linked. Yeah.
But yeah, that is the reason why we know about substantial Negroes, is because white people started suffering from it. If it was black people suffering from it and black people having neurological diseases, they'd be like, so what? Because they could care less about us. But white people started to suffer from Parkinson and Alzheimer's. So they were like, what is going on? Why are these white people getting so sick? That is the reason why they had to start opening up brains and see what's really going on. And then they started to realize there's a black substance that really controls all of this stuff. Do you understand? So a lot of their experiments are due to the fact that they suffer. They just don't let us know. So white people are more likely to suffer from Parkinson's. They won't tell us that though. You'll never see that as a headline in the news, but you will see that black people are more likely to suffer from type 2 diabetes, more likely to have high blood pressure, more likely to do this and more likely to do that. And again, there's power in that, because if you know anyone who's been diagnosed with cancer, if the doctor says you've only got such and such time to live, if that person believes that, then the doctor's 99% right. You've only got a month to live. You believe that, you got a month to live. But the doctor has said, and I've got people in my family that can attest to this, the doctor has said to a lot of people, you've only got a month to live. And 8 years later, they're still alive. Why? Because they didn't believe what the doctors told them. And it goes back to what I said, what we said right at the beginning of this talk, that what you believe to be true, more than likely is the truth for you. What you believe to be true turns out to be true.
Exactly. Thank you so much. We've gone 4 minutes over, and I know you've got a class. So if you'd like to end by telling us a bit more about how to get the book, and also the Hidden Science Academy, how people can get in touch with you if they want to learn more. And of course, everybody, come to African Spiritual Practices on 26th and 27th. The link is in the chat, but let's give the last word to you, Leon.
Thank you. So yeah, my debut book, The Hidden Science of Melanin, reveals all the secrets that they're, thank you, Jem, thank you for that. Reveals all the secrets with regards to what they're hiding from us, especially, water and plants and that sort of stuff, and cannabis. A lot of stuff that's in the book, but you can get it by going to thehiddenscienceacademy.com, and it will be up on Amazon next month. But for now, that's the only place you can get it, or come to the event. I'll be selling it at the event. So I look forward to the event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you'll join us. I think tomorrow I'm speaking to Griot Chineri. Tuesday I'm speaking to somebody almost every single day. So however you heard about this, keep looking in that place. You will hear so much more about everybody else who's going to be speaking at the end of the month. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.
Good night. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everybody. Our guest had to quickly shoot off because he does actually have the class. So I hope to see you at the event. We're still looking for volunteers. If you would like to volunteer sometime, then here is my telephone number, 07389 136 084. I've put that in the chat. Let me know if you would like to volunteer, and also if you are a trader. I think we've got about 3 stall positions left, or if you're a reader, do divination, I think we've got 1 space left for somebody like that. So my telephone number is there, 07389 136 084, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow with Griot Chineri. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care and good night.
Melanin pigment, right?
Right.
Is so unbelievable, George. They're using it in computer chips now. They're using it in computer chips now because it has an ability to transduce electrical energy. Can you imagine this? It has this incredible ability to hold on to and transduce and manipulate electrons, electronic energy, and photons, photonic energy. It's a fascinating molecule.